Hey, thanks for tuning back into the weight room. We have guest Dr. Anna Maria Temple coming on, joining us again. She was on back in December on episode 41, so if you haven't seen that one, go check that one out. But she's coming back on, and we're going to talk about the immune system, healthy habits, things we can do from a more holistic approach. We're going to talk about really what that means as well, so stay tuned. And before we get started, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, all the places you get podcasts. So thanks for tuning in, and here we go. It's good to have you back on. Thanks for coming back here to the weight room. And, the first time we talked, it was back in December, and there was just, it seems like in a way it was a completely different world, and the same way it seems like it was, we haven't really made that much progress in another kind of direction. So good to have you back on and talk about those kind of things, and good to have you back.
Yeah, no, awesome. It's great to be here. I think we need to talk about it because I do agree. I think we're doing the same thing all over again. Absolutely.
So if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us just a little bit about you, your background a little bit, and then we can get into it from there.
Sure. My name is Dr. Anna Maria Temple, and I'm a holistic pediatrician, and I've been trained in the traditional model, but because my children were sick in 2007 with asthma, eczema, allergies, constipation, diarrhea, ADHD, and horrible seasonal allergies, I took a journey with them. And because I was able to help them accomplish wellness and recover from chronic disease by doing things that I wasn't taught in medical school, here I am today practicing a different kind of medicine because of the lessons that my children taught me through their illnesses. And, in 2007, I was out of med school for 5 years when my children were suffering with the things that I mentioned, and I couldn't find any relief in the traditional doctor model. All they prescribed was antibiotics and allergy medications, and they suggested allergy shots for my 2-year-old, and for my daughter's eczema, it was steroid creams. For asthma, it was inhaled steroids, and for her seasonal allergies, it was more Zyrtec and Claritin, and it went on, and it was very frustrating. And as a lot of my parents that I treat now are so incredibly frustrated by just medications on top of medications. So was I, but I didn't know what to do. And on a Tuesday morning, I went to my kids' elementary school where a nutritionist was talking about food. And it was on that day that the fog lifted. And I realized that the root cause of my children's illness, and all she talked about, was sugar. And so I went home and changed all our pantry, got rid of the Lucky Charms and Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Pop-Tarts and chicken nuggets and juice boxes and chocolate milks and Nesquik, and you name a garbage, we had it. And, I became an outcast in my medical practice. I became an outcast in my own home with my friends. My husband and I fought for the next 5 years over food, because what does food have to do with the immune system? Food got to do with it? And then over the next 5 years, because I'm, a warrior mom, and warrior mamas, nothing stands in their ways. And my kids came off their medication. They no longer needed antibiotics, steroids, creams, allergy medications, never needed allergy shots or ADHD medicines. And then, fast forward to 2016, we actually, moved to New Zealand. We quit our jobs, moved to New Zealand, no doctors, no medications, no health insurance. And my children thrived across the world and climbed the highest mountains and bungee jumped off the tallest bridges. And I got to see what it's like to recover from chronic disease. So when I came back in the US in 2018, I started my own practice teaching families on how to prevent and reverse chronic disease with lifestyle modifications and holistic approaches rather than relying only on medications.
I think one common misconception that people, I think when you hear that, it's like you either have the people who are, super pro holistic, or they're, anti-holistic. It's, they know what they're doing. They, they're medical doctors, all this other stuff. Instead of saying, or being able to say there's a good area to the medical system, the if you have an emergency going on, like you need to go to there because that's where they have the best, and stuff like that. But for your day to day, this is maybe a better way than the medication and everything like that. So that was just one thing I noticed, were people who were just so anti-holistic, saying, they thought we were trying to say, don't go see your doctor, don't go, if you need something, don't go get it. Like, that was completely not what at least what I was trying to come across as. I was just trying to, on the last episode, bring a different perspective into people's thought patterns, because I think we don't really get a fair shake on both sides of what can be beneficial. And I think it's interesting, you may have mentioned it last time, but just the fact that nutritionists did come to your kid's school, because that's something that very few, at least in my experience, I've never heard of, that type of thing. So it's cool that was available, at least at that, particular instance. I think that would be such a cool thing to have for every school. Have a professional come in and talk about why food is so important, because it's weird how unhealthy food is seen as like a reward, or it's seen as just a standard way of eating. I think there's just so many different levels when it comes to information, when it comes to educating parents, educating a kid. So when they become a parent, all these different levels of it. And that's, one definitely big reason why I'm glad to have you on and share a little bit of that information.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to, those are all great points. So I was going to kind of go in a little systematic order. So one of the things that you said that I think that is a huge misconception is that there's only one way of doing something, that there's only one way to treat your infection. There's only one way to treat XYZ. And what's happened, so I'm just going to a little bit elaborate on that. What's happened is that modern medicine is amazing for acute care. If you can't breathe, you go to the doctor and you get a breathing treatment. If you have an infection with pus coming out, you go to the doctor, you get antibiotics. If you have appendicitis, you go see the surgeon so they remove the appendix. I mean, that's what we do. And we are so thankful for modern medicine. What we're trying to discuss is that in chronic conditions, we're applying the same principles of acute care to chronic care, and it's not working. So if you can't breathe, you go to the doctor. But if you can't breathe on Monday or Tuesday, and then next month and the month after that, and every time you get a cold, you can't breathe, the question is, why am I going to the doctor over and over again? Because I can't breathe every month whenever I get a cold. And that's where I feel that in the traditional model, we're falling short. It's not in the acute. So and in the medical school, we're taught very acute care stuff. And then when it comes to things like diabetes or weight issues or blood pressure issues, it's kind of like, oh, eat a healthy diet and exercise, but here's the medication. And we're not taught as physicians. And actually the name doctor is actually in Latin means teacher. We're supposed to educate our families and our patients and our clients how you're supposed to eat a healthy diet. How do you get your kids to eat vegetables? How do you motivate yourself to get off the couch after you've been sitting in it for 10 years? How do you do this? There's an art to convincing people to change their life, which is why we're in the pickle we're in. So that's where we're falling short. And it's not the doctor's fault. We're in a medical system that expects doctors to see patients in 10-minute increments. In 10 minutes, you barely say hello. You could write a prescription. For me to tell you how to get your picky eater to eat a green pepper, it takes a long time. It takes much more than 10 minutes. So that because it is important for people to know the difference and kind of where things stand. And, it especially today, I'm glad we're talking about it because we're so divided in everything. And we don't need to be divided in medicine as well. You're the only way to do it, and you're the only way, and you take vitamin D for your pneumonia, never take an antibiotic. Well, that's silly. But at the same time, it's like, well, you get recurrent pneumonias and just keep taking antibiotics and don't do anything else. That's silly. So we do have to merge the two systems and figure out the best points from each side, because there's no black and white. There's just not one way of doing things. So I'll put that one aside. But that will go into nutrition, because we would have so much less illness and so much less chronic disease if we had nutrition. And I love your point about, yes, we start with the children. And in fact, before I went to New Zealand in 2014, I noticed in my clinic that when I was talking to families about nutrition, the parents were like, they had never changed anything. So then I started changing my focus from the parents to the child. So like the 6-year-old will come in and I was like, what are you eating for lunch? I'd always do, even my 10-minute visits, I could do a quick diet history. And they're like, Lunchables. And I was like, ugh. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to go home and I want you to take a highlighter. And I know you're only in first grade. So when you turn over the box, you're going to look in the ingredients, and I'd have a sample box and I'd turn over the ingredients. I was like, I want you to read these ingredients. And with your highlighter, you highlight the ones you know: water, chicken, ham, cheese. And if 50%, and I was being really generous, if 50% of the ingredients in your Lunchable are highlighted, we will call it food. But if less than 50 are highlighted, we will call it garbage. And you will never eat this ever again. And I can't tell you how many kids, well, actually, how many parents would call me. They're like, you've made our life so difficult because now we don't have Lunchables. They refuse to eat Lunchables. And this happened over and over. And I would just have a conversation. They're like, oh, I'm on the sports field and I'm drinking Gatorade. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about why you're drinking Gatorade. I need electrolytes. I'm like, okay, but do you know that there's like 36 packets of sugar in the size of Gatorade, which is negating everything you've done on the sports field? If you want electrolytes, how about an apple and water? And when I would talk to the kids, just very simple like that, they were like, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, right, because no one teaches us that. So they changed. So I actually developed a curriculum randomly based on everything I was seeing in clinic, and I presented to the schools. So one of the schools in our town with Charlotte-Mecklenburg system, elementary school, they were like, oh my gosh, this is exactly our 3rd grade curriculum. So I went and I taught like over 1,000 students in the public school, and then the private school, also at one of the private schools in town, taught several hundred kids over there. But I'll tell you, it was really difficult for the schools to let me in to teach nutrition for free as a doctor, because I can't even explain why. And, I expected nothing back. I just wanted to teach kids to drink more water, don't eat cereal for breakfast, move more, and understand why you're putting how to read nutrition labels properly in really simple games that they actually were so super engaged. So it's not, even the schools have a block against it too. I couldn't possibly tell you what it was, because no one would really say why they not let me come in.
It's like whenever you think from a core level something is wrong, but you can't figure it out, it's almost like that. It's like somebody doesn't understand why they think this is weird, or, we shouldn't be telling people this. But I think it's just simply because that's not the message that we're told. It's, it's not, the popular message. It's not the most common thing we're hearing. When it comes to like holistic, though, I think that's an interesting word, because it does, like I was saying before, it kind of has some division there. How would you describe what holistic really means?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So the popular misconception on holistic is that it means natural, no medications, no vaccines, no chemicals, nothing. Actually, that's not true. Holistic means whole person, whole body. So when I look at a child that's coming in, let's just say eczema. When they come in and they have eczema, I don't just look at the skin. The skin is an organ that is attached to all the other organs in the child, to the child that is attached to the family that's attached to the community that's attached to an environment. So when we look at holistic, when we take eczema as an example, we don't put topical steroids. Sometimes you do need topical steroids. But we look at it, why are you having eczema? What's going on the inside of the child? What other issues are we seeing? Are we seeing other lung issues, brain issues? You'll be amazed how many kids are so irritable, because when your skin looks like that, your brain is also looking like that. The inside of your body looks like that. And when we fix eczema, suddenly we're fixing their mood, we're fixing their bowels, we're fixing their anxiety, we're fixing their ADHD, because it's all interrelated. So in the traditional model, when you have eczema, you go to the dermatologist. When you have asthma, you go to the pulmonologist. And then, there's a lot of ologists. and everyone focuses on one body part. A holistic doctor focuses at the whole human, and not just a human, but we got to take the human within context of the family. If the family's stressed out of their mind, they can't make ends meet. They're being fired from their jobs because of what's going on in the world, or the amount of stress is so intense. Well, the child will absorb that stress, which will elicit eczema in the child. If the environment the child lives in is filled with bleach and chemicals and fragrance and perfumes and candles and all that in itself is going to trigger eczema in the child. And we can't just put a steroid on it because we're not fixing all the different parts that come with a diagnosis of eczema. So, and then if we're thinking like no meds, no nothing, that's more natural care versus holistic. Holistic is a whole body, human community, mind, body, spirit.
Gotcha. That definitely makes sense. If there was somebody out there that said something against that, they would probably say something like, well, how can they know, as much detail as a cardiologist about the heart or as any other ologist about any other body part? But what it really sounds like is that from the acute versus the chronic, acutely you would go to a cardiologist for something that would be really in that moment.
Like a heart attack.
Right.
Yeah, like a heart attack. Yeah.
So I can see, that, and I think it makes sense because it's hard to kind of understand, but at the same time, I think it's just a really basic idea, like how everything is connected, and we don't really think about, and I think that's kind of just like a lack of knowledge, like how everything around us plays a role in our health and in, our mental, physical health and how those two are related. But getting kind of to, a lot of people are concerned about these days, and you're seeing a lot of marketing on, and certainly, I think it's potentially good that we're seeing more marketing on it because that means there's more attention to it. But then you also have to be careful of, is that a good product? But that's the immune system. This food boosts your immune system. This supplement doing this boosts your immune system. But from your experience, like what are some of those really, whether it's a habit, whether it's a food, whether it's a specific supplement that somebody might benefit from, like what are those things that somebody can do that somebody should know about when it comes to their immune system?
Well, it's like my passion because it's prevention. If we have our immune system, we're able to defend a lot of things. Probably another misconception is that if you have a strong immune system, you never get sick. That's actually not how that works. If you have a strong immune system, you're going to get sick, but you're sick for only a little bit and you get over your sickness quickly and you're not ending up in the hospital and it's not a big dramatic event. So when you get a cold, you get COVID, you get flu, you're just going to be a little bit sick because the body has never seen, let's say, a specific virus and the body has to mount an immune response. So if you've never seen RSV, which is a respiratory syncytial virus that is going around right now like hotcakes in kids. But if your body's never seen it, you're going to see the body sees the virus invades. Well, you have to get some snot and some cough and some boogers and some stuff in order. That's how the body sees the virus, and the immune system is creating snot. The immune system is creating cough. The cough is helping get rid of the virus because you're spewing the virus out. The snot is helping get the virus out of your nose. So it is a symptom of the immune system working. And then if you're able to get well in a couple of days, well, you have a rocking immune system. But it does not mean that if you get a little cold here, a little thing there, another thing there, that you don't have a strong immune system. So that's been because with the masks and the stuff that's been going on in the past year and a half, we've been given this message that we should never have anything. We should not suffer from anything. And that is just not true. And that's not even achievable. And it's going to cause a lot of people to be very stressed out. Our immune system has been with us for thousands of years. We've seen viruses for thousands of years, bacteria and fungi. We're supposed to work around them. And, when it comes to how we defend ourselves, oftentimes, especially in the modern world, we're relying on a lot of external things. I'm not saying the external things don't work. I'm not saying the plexiglass doesn't work or the mask don't work. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, but we're relying on that while we're chomping on some fast food, while we're smoking, while we're not going to the gym. And then we're going, I'm good because I'm wearing this mask, or I'm good because I'm staying away 6 feet from people. We are not getting the message that actually the power against an illness and for a healthy body is actually from within us. And, I have a whole book, which I know you and I have already talked about. And, but in the book, I describe the 5 pillars on how to get your immune system on track. And I do start with nutrition because what we put into our bodies is what the body uses to make strong cells so we can defend against the environment. One of the things that I still don't feel like we've gotten the message is, of course, sugar. And because I deal with kids, sugar is like, to your point earlier, sugar is like we're drowning in sugar because the food industry has found out that sugar just makes everything taste good, is very addictive. The children are going to whine and they're going to force the parents to go buy it. And to your earlier point as well, we used to have a parent-driven family where now it's more of a child-driven family. I totally agree with you. At dinner time, we do not ask children, what do you want for dinner? Because it is going to be pizza. And so it's going to be hot dogs. And then you say, of course not, we're going to have chicken and broccoli. Well, then they're going to scream and cry, but we set them up for failure. So in that case, you say, would you like chicken or broccoli, or should we have salmon cakes and sweet potatoes? And then now the child can have a choice, but you're not giving them the lead onto how they're going to feed the family, because a child will always choose garbage. So sugar is invaded in all our lives. And now school's back in session and the teachers give out candy. There's a school in our town that when you do a lap around the track, you get a candy bar. I mean, can anyone listening right now who's going to the gym, you go to the gym, you kill yourself on a workout, and then you go home, and on your way home, you're like, let me eat a Twix bar? That doesn't, no, I don't know anyone, even the people that are not necessarily nutritionally savvy, you know not to eat a candy bar after you worked out. But we're giving this message to our children, and then we're like, they're so annoying. They're just addicted to sugar. I'm like, because we did it. We made them addicted to sugar. And sugar blocks the immune system from working for up to 5 hours. And it's just 100 grams. 100 grams is a can of Coke, 10 ounces of orange juice, or 2 slices of cake. Sounds like a birthday party. So when you go to a birthday party, 50% of the guests at a child's birthday party end up sick with snot and congestion. And it's not because, oh, these kids are snotty. The kids are always snotty, okay? It's because of the food that we have at a birthday party, which is laden with sugar. And if you were to bring orange slices to a birthday party, people will be like, oh my God, you're so weird. That's so bizarre. How could you? The kids are not going to have any fun. The kids truly don't care. Anyway, but that's what sugar does to our bodies. And we know fruits and vegetables are what power up the immune system, because Mother Nature has put vitamins and minerals in our plants. And I'm not saying you just have to eat plants, but plants and great organic meats and organic dairy and wholesome foods. The nutrition is in the food from the earth. It's not from the food in a lab. And I know when you turn the nutrition label, you're like, oh, but it's got B12 and I see vitamin C. Okay, man added that because without that, in the 1950s, when they started doing processed foods, it was after the war. They tried to make housewives' life easier. So they made these packaged foods, but they didn't put any vitamins in them. And people were becoming nutritionally deficient on lab work. So the food industry was like, oh, well, we can't have that. So we need to add vitamins into the food in order, like baby rice cereal. They add vitamins in there to make it seem like it's an actual food. That's not actual food for babies. It is vitamins that man added to make it appear as food. But if we look at the earth and what the earth gives us on a farm, that's where Mother Nature puts all the vitamins and minerals that's important for our immune system. And, you know, it's really trendy. I'm a holistic doctor. I do integrative medicine. And everybody's like, what supplement shall I take? And I'm just like, eat more salmon, eat sardines, eat fruits and vegetables. So, because we're relying, the new trendy thing is supplements, because it's easier to take a pill or a gummy than to eat the actual fruit and vegetable. And then, of course, we have movement, and we're in the world of stay home, Zoom school, Zoom work, you know, order your groceries, order your food, your gym's at home. So now we've become like these homebound, sedentary people. We are already a problem before in the United States. Now we've made it 1,000 times worse. And now we've made all the children addicted to screens because we put them on Zoom school for 8 hours a day in developing brains that should not be exposed to that much screen time. And so here's another problem we cause. Sleep. United States, the average amount of sleep is like 4 to 5 hours. Teenagers in my clinic, not in my current clinic, because everyone knows I'm all about their sleep. In my previous life in standard practice, the average time a teenager was sleeping is 6 hours, 5.5 to 6 hours of sleep at night, which is less than what they should be getting. And we know that when you sleep less than, it actually quadruples your chances of getting a cold. And then, of course, environment. I mean, all the chemicals that we're spraying, because we were taught, let's spray bleach everywhere because that's what kills the viruses. There can't be anything else that kills the virus, only bleach. And we know in countries in Europe where they did studies on bleach, the people that were using bleach at least once a week to clean their home, their children had more tonsillitis, strep throat, flu, and colds than families where they did not use bleach on a regular basis. But yet here we have this, and there's a lot of countries bleach is not even allowed as part of their environment.
Yeah, and going to the bleach thing, like that's something that, if you think about it from a company perspective, like that's what people are using on a daily basis, you know, to clean everything. And that's what companies are worried about is employee health, you know, because they got to be there to work. The ones that are working from a actual location, they're so worried about, you know, are we going to get COVID? And that's why, you know, you're seeing all these measures being taken. But the bleach thing, yeah, it's like it's an everyday people taking stuff in and wiping their desks down multiple times a day and, you know, doing all those things. And it's interesting. I've never heard that study before, but it's almost seems like you're doing definitely more harm than the potential of doing good.
Right. And then nobody's sharing what other products can we do, because there are other products on the market that are FDA approved and EPA approved. So it's not just like me making stuff up, but like they've gone through rigorous testing and they work against viruses without having the adverse outcomes. We never hear about them. All you hear about is bleach and Lysol. I mean, and, you know, makes you wonder like who's paying for the ads.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The whole kind of system just makes you wonder that, you know, where. And one thing that I was, you know, I'm curious about is like, and you mentioned like making processed foods to make things easier. And did this whole thing really start from a good position? And if so, then I think that's okay. But like the fact that we have all this information on the negatives, you know, side effects and things and long-term things that can happen because of processed foods and all the sugary things and everything else, but we're still doing it, you know. To me, it's one thing to do it, to start something because you might have good intentions, but whenever you just keep doing it, regardless of the effect on real people, that's when it makes you question, like, is there really a way to turn things around, or is it just too big?
Well, you know, we get used to a thing. Humans don't like change. None of us like change. I know it's been like, I love change. I mean, nobody likes change. You like change if it's convenient for you. But if it's your favorite show that you can no longer watch, you're going to be ticked. If it's your favorite food that I'm going to say it's pretty much killing you, you're going to be upset. So we all are like fine with change when it's not a big deal. When it really matters to us, we don't like change. And the human mind does everything in its power to keep things the same. And there's like, you know, like you go to the cardiologist, you had your heart attack. And now the question is, well, what are we doing? Because we know it's your diet, we know it's your stress, we know it's your smoking, we know it's your lack of sleep, we know it's lack of movement, right? So it's the holistic approach to it. And now your doctor's like, okay, well, in order to prevent another heart attack from coming, you have to employ the 5 pillars. And you're like, oh, well, I'm really like my Netflix show and watch it. And I'm too tired after work. I work a lot. And, you know, and there's a continuous, again, the brain is like, oh my God, that was really bad. I almost died. But the brain's like, oh, don't change anything. Keep eating bacon. Keep it, you know, you'll be fine. Just take these pills. So there's this drive of trying to stay the same. And when unfortunately nobody's bad in this, when we have pills and we have the magic potion, it's easier to take that than to make the change of giving, I'm just going to beat up on bacon for a second. There's nothing based mine. But in this case of the heart attack, it's so much harder to give up the bacon. It is so much easier to take the blood pressure medicine, which most likely will lead to possibly diabetes and some cholesterol issues. But you're like, that's okay. That's just another pill. And you start going down the road and, you know, you look at excuses of, oh, well, why did I have a heart attack? Oh, it's genetics. Okay, well, if we were all genetics, then we would be 100% guaranteed to have something. So I often use the example of like breast cancer. There's a gene called BRCA gene. And if you have the BRCA gene, it puts you at 50% risk of developing breast cancer. Those are staggering odds. That is really scary. But what most people don't hear in that is, but there's 50% of people that don't get cancer. They have that gene, they don't get cancer. Why? And I don't see research, I don't see investigation into figuring out what are those people doing that have this gene and don't get cancer. Because if genetics was the answer to everything, 100% of people should be getting breast cancer because of the BRCA gene, if that makes sense. So there's more to our lives than genetics. But when it comes to chronic disease, an easy thing to blame, heart attack and breast cancer happening behind me, nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like you mentioned the fact that like people know in the moment when they have something crazy happen, like a heart attack, they know like, okay, I should turn things around. But then at that certain period of time when they no longer are eating healthy or working out, some people it's a little bit longer than others, but it's just so fascinating because like what other animal species is out there doing something that they absolutely know is going to lead to their deaths? It's like, why is it so easy for us to do that? It's interesting because we have this knowledge of life and death. We have this knowledge of how bad death can be in some cases and how great life can be, but we still choose to go down the rabbit hole of, not extending and living a healthier, happier life. I don't understand like what about humanity, or maybe if it's not humanity, it's a culture. I don't know what it is, but it's just so crazy that we are like that.
Well, one of the things I observed was when I was in traditional practice, let's say somebody came in with chronic headaches and I would talk about nutrition and I'd talk about some sleep, stress in my 10 minutes, right? Only very briefly, obviously. At the end of the visit, I would give them a pill that will help with a headache. Let's get you some relief from this headache that's been going on for 6 months so you can focus on the things that we mentioned. Well, what I noticed that was happening is people would come back, they've done nothing except take the pill, and they would be upset when there was a side effect. They would be upset when it wasn't working, but they didn't do anything, so they asked for the next pill. Yeah, I'm going to get to my lifestyle stuff, but first I got to get the headache. When I moved to New Zealand and I practiced medicine, there's no malpractice, and the hospitals there's no Google reviews, there's no incentive, my bonus because patient satisfaction scores. I mean, really, you just go in your clinic and you do the job that you know best to do without all the other pressure in the US. And what I started doing, which was really scary, when the person came in with chronic headaches, I was like, there's no pill for this. Because truly, there's no pill for it. And I was like, there's no pill for this. We have to work. Again, I work with children, not with adults that have had issues for a long time. And we're going to have to turn Netflix off. You can't watch Netflix until 2 o'clock in the morning. You're going to have to start eating breakfast. We're going to have to do water. We're going to have to go outside in the sunshine. And, a lot of my teens would be like, I'm not doing it. And I was like, well, that's fine. Because there's no pill. There's nothing I can do for you. You're going to have to do it. And if you do all the things I'm telling you, then you're not better, come back to see me. We'll go to plan B. But we have nothing else. 90% of my patients stopped watching Netflix, started eating breakfast. It wasn't immediate. Some took a couple months, but there was no other option. And when there's no other option and you have pain, you're going to change something. I had people giving up their favorite sugary foods. I had people, and they would come back and they're like, I feel better. I feel so great. How can this happen without medication? Because, just because it's New Zealand, they still have the same kind of a pill love that we do as well. But that's what I noticed. I didn't give them another option. Therefore, they had to make the choice to change.
Yeah, I think that's a tough thing right there, is just the choice. And when you have an easier road, whether that's good for you in the long term or not, it's just so hard to make in the short term, a harder choice and a harder, go down that harder, more dedicated or disciplined road for the time being. And, it's so true in nutrition, and it's also true in exercise. You see people who come to the gym and they're new in the gym and they're motivated and then you see them a couple days a week, and then you see them once a week, and then you might see them like once a month, and then you never see them again. And it's like, what made you actually come in here? And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, is that why. Is that something you try to get across to people, is like, why do you want to do this?
Oh gosh, that is like my entire social media, like my entire mission is to teach people why. Because I firmly believe if you understand why you're at the gym, why you have to reduce your sugar, why you have to sleep at night, you are going to make a change. Just telling people that's what you should do because it's healthy, that's so boring and so nondescript. I'm like, nothing. That leads to nothing. People need to know, if I sleep better tomorrow, for my teenagers, it's like tomorrow I can pay attention in class better, which leads to less homework, which leads to more time with my friends, or in some cases more YouTube time, whatever. But it's like getting them, and it has to be the why for them, not the why for the rest of the world. Like to your point, the person coming in the gym, one person might have had a heart attack. That's their why. But you can't use because it's good for heart health for everybody. Very boring. For another person, is because I want to date better looking people, or because I really want to fit into this dress, or whatever. But figuring out the why for each person is so incredibly powerful, because once you find it, then you can hone it, and we can work with mindset. And as you work with a mindset, then the changes happen.
Yeah. And that why, it seems like right now, if only we were spreading more information on the why, the benefits, it's hard to personalize it from a broad scale, but if we were just to share more, okay, yeah, you have your vaccine now, but what's next? That this is great, but are you getting how many ever minutes of exercise? Or are you, eating more of these foods? Are you cutting out maybe some of these habits? Like, I'm not somebody to tell you that you should or shouldn't do anything, but I think if you have information on it, then you can make that choice. You get to be in a better position because, it's something that you want to do. And I think right now we're just not, and it's such a great opportunity. Unfortunately, it's not something, at least that I'm seeing anywhere. And I'm trying not to watch too much of the news, so maybe I'm just missing it. But it's something that I'm not seeing anybody say oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know that, I heard this on the news last night about, doing this, and it's helpful right now, especially because of this. If we were just more focused on helping people instead of, oh, the X rates went up X%, and, another story on the vaccines and the community. Of course, some things are important to talk about, and they're not always going to be happy, but let's try to talk about something that is positive and can lead to positive change.
Right. And I think that what we're missing is, your point is, exactly, we're not talking about why this virus happened, right? You hear somebody made the virus, or whatever your theory is on how the virus came, it's actually irrelevant for our conversation here. It's whatever, you take it and do things with it. But we focus on, the virus has spread, and we're like, okay, we're pointing fingers. Okay, that's not helpful. The virus is out. However it arrived, it's out and it's spreading. Why is it spreading? Oh, because it's very virulent, which means that it's infecting a lot of people really quickly, moving from person to person. And okay, that's fine, but why are people so sick? And it's because the virus. So we're pointing the finger at the virus continuously. No one's pointing the fingers at themselves. The reason this virus is causing so much problem is because we're the sickest that we've ever been in the entire Earth life. If we look, it's not just the United States, the whole world, we are sicker than ever. We have the most amount of cancer, the most amount of diabetes, the most amount of ADHD, most amount of anxiety, of eczema. Every disease that is in the chronic sense is the worst that it's ever been. And the virus is picking on people that have weakened systems, like we talked about. And we're not going, hey, listen, if we can strengthen this stuff, how can we help us, the humanity, to provide a bigger defense? We are, again, all external, vaccine, plexiglass, masks, isolation. We're not going no, but this virus is not going away, because these viruses don't go away. Shall we think of, let me see, SARS, which was, one of the coronaviruses from 12 years ago, had 80% mortality. Not a very good virus, because if you kill the host, you're not going to be able to infect it. Like Ebola is not a good virus. It's 90% fatality. You get it, it kills you. Okay, well, you can't spread it. COVID is a good, well, you know what I mean by good virus, because
effective,
it doesn't kill, right? Effective. Thank you. That's a better word. It doesn't kill the host. It lets you walk around asymptomatic, feeling, for most people, still most people are asymptomatic, spreading it around. And then the people that are at a different health parameter are getting the virus and they're coming down with significant sickness. And if we could just said, oh my gosh, but why are we so sick? Wait, let's look at our food source. Wait, we're not outside. Well, let's look at our vitamin D levels. I just had a big post on Insta about the meta-analyses, which means that big universities have actually looked at all the studies done to see if there's any truth to the matter. This vitamin D levels, does that correlate with COVID in any way? And what they're finding is that when you have low vitamin D levels, you're more likely to get COVID, more likely to be hospitalized, more likely to have long haul syndrome. Why are we talking about that? It's a simple blood test. Is your vitamin D level enough? And the people that have good vitamin D levels are at the equator. The people that are further and further away from the equator, your vitamin D levels get lower and lower. And we have, in my clinic, a lot of people are like, it's summer, we're outside all the time. I'm like, no, you're not. You are not outside like we used to be outside when I was a young type. I'm 48 years old. So a million years ago, we were outside all the time because there was no TV. There was nothing to do in the house. We were outside. Current people are not outside all the time. Generally speaking, nobody get upset. So anyways, that's an example. So we're micronutrient deficiency. Another one that I'm tackling is going to be zinc. And why are we deficient in zinc? Because it's not in the soil, because the farmers what am I trying to say? They're not rotating the crops.
Crop rotation.
And so so they're not doing crop rotation. They're not putting minerals in the soil. So if you're going to get a seed or a nut and you're expecting it to have zinc, well, the nut doesn't make zinc. It comes from the soil. And if the soil's deficient in zinc, the nut's deficient in zinc, which means the human eating the nut is deficient in zinc. And if we have a zinc deficiency, our immune system is down, which means we're more likely to get COVID and other viral illnesses. So again, that's looking at the root cause, root problem. Let's investigate it as a nation, as a world. Why are we micronutrient deficiencies? Why are we serving, sugary cereal and juice and chocolate milk in schools? Oh, by the way, when I talk to maybe that's why I'm not allowed in schools, because I talked to the principal and I was like, can we do something about the children's breakfast? And she said, oh my gosh, we can't do anything about it because we have children that have no food at their house. This is their only meal of the day. And I was like, so as the only
even
meal
bigger
of the day,
reason.
We're giving them Captain Crunch. I'm like, I don't understand. And then, at lunch, we're giving them ice cream and Doritos. And they're like, well, they're suffering enough. I'm like, we're just giving them disease. I'm like, I don't understand. Anyway, getting really passionate, heated up. The point is, in this pandemic, we are not talking about the root cause. We're stopping at the external factors and we're acting like, there's nothing we can do because the virus mutated. Okay, virus has mutated for thousands of years. Okie dokie. That's not an answer. Nothing we can do. Now there's a Delta variant. What are we going to do about that? You're going to eat fruits and vegetables and you're going to lay down the sugar, put down the alcohol. Now everyone's going to stop listening because I went after the alcohol.
It's over.
It's done.
But yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the kind of the comorbidities, and I actually heard something, and I don't know if it was the deaths or the hospitalizations, but it was like the majority of one of the two, maybe both, was 4 comorbidities. So like that's a lot. If you really think about like what that means, I think it's scary for the now, but it's good news for the potential, because that means it puts the power back in our hands. When we make this thing worse than it is, and I don't want to downplay it because I think there's danger in downplaying anything, but you also don't want to make it worse than it is or not give people information. But giving people that information that you're just talking about, with the vitamin D and the zinc and the fruits and vegetables and all this other stuff, like, that's when it's back, the power's back in your hands. You don't have to wait on a booster shot. You don't have to wait on, whatever else. You might, like we're talking about, you might still get it because your immune system doesn't function to be invincible. But I think, we would definitely be in much better position if we just played this thing as if we had control over it, at least to some degree.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's this lack, and I think that's probably one of the things that fuels a lot of the division and a lot of the anger and frustration, because when you're not in control, like if you think of your own house, if you suddenly feel like you're out of control and your spouse is the only one in control, there's nothing you can do. They say, you do. That becomes very frustrating. You become very angry, right? The children, if they don't have any say in it, we don't empower them in any way. They become anxious. They become, withdrawn. It becomes very negative. And so in this situation of a pandemic, we are not telling people that they have the control, they have the power. So when you feel powerless, your human reaction is to lash out, because nobody wants to. We don't want change, and we don't want to be powerless. And if we could put the power back in humanity, oh my gosh, we would make so much change.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And right now with the COVID going on, the COVID pandemic going on, have you been seeing more backlash either on social media or wherever it's may come from, like just from what you're talking about? Do you see more of the negativity of you don't need to tell people to do this, you need to tell them to go get the vaccine, and that's the only thing? Like, have you been experiencing more backlash because of your holistic approach?
Well, number one, I don't go near the vaccine because they will take my medical license away in a second, and they will they'll take my account. The Federal Trade Commission already peruses all my YouTube videos and accounts, and they've already censored a bunch of things. So I don't go I stay away from that. I just present data of root causes of where it can be, and I just kind of leave it alone. I'm seeing many more people more willing to change, but I have a different platform. I have a very positive platform. I do not encourage negative. I encourage a discussion. However, if you're going to be rude or ridiculous, you do get blocked, because there's just no reason for that. So I have my page is like people can have open discussions, whether we talk about masks, whether we talk about vitamin D, whatever. People can have a conversation. I got people really upset because I talked about sugar the other day. So actually, the mask was a really controversial one, but the sugar was So, but I'm seeing people, I feel that people are either more aware, more willing to make a change, more eager to learn different things and talk about something else than like vaccines and masks. They're like, great, what else can we do? Okay, what can we do in the kids' lunch? What can we do? That's one of the things I've been doing a lot of, is going to Costco and Target and Walmart to do shopping tours to show people, because, you go eat less sugar and everyone's like, oh, that's nice. And they're like, but what product should I get? What is the thing that I should buy? And now that I'm going to the stores and shopping for you, basically, people are like, yes, okay, now I'll do that. Now I know, because if you just say eat healthy, what does that mean? Eat less sugar, what does that mean? If I'm like, okay, don't buy this oatmeal, buy that oatmeal. Don't buy this yogurt, buy that yogurt. They're like, got it. And then, also the way I'm educating is also change based on the responses. And of course, that probably elicits a lot of positive, I'm changing with my audience and then figuring out what their needs are. So that's led to a lot of positivity. Because change is hard, I try to break it down in tiny steps, into weaning off. So let's say it's Doritos. Let's beat up on that. So I'm like, I don't want you to eat Doritos anymore. Well, they're delicious. We're just going to be honest for a second, okay? They're delicious because the chemists sit in a lab and figure out exactly what chemicals to put in there so your taste buds are addicted. Where Mother Nature makes a tomato, and you just have to like the tomato because you're human, not because it was created specifically for your taste buds. Anyway, so you have the Dorito, and if you come see me, you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take away my Doritos. All right, great. Well, but for some people, they can put it away. For some people, it's like, all right, well, then only buy Doritos once a week. Okay, now buy Doritos once a month. Okay, instead of the Dorito, let's replace it with something else, because you can't be sitting around just craving stuff. You have to fill that void with something, because if we just leave the void, then all you're going to think about is Doritos and call me bad names and just be like, well, that doctor is kind of obnoxious because now I'm starving. All I can think about is Doritos all the time. So there's many different steps that we can do with replacement, weaning down, not shopping for it, hanging out with people. One of the things that I notice is that when people start start changing their habits, they also change their friends. Because if you have stopped eating Doritos, you're not necessarily going to be hanging out with the people that are continuously eating Doritos in front of your face because your values change. Like, I'm not eating Doritos because I'm going to fit in my dress, or because I'm starting to go to the gym, or because I want my skin to be whatever. So all of a sudden you see the person who has awesome skin and is fitting into a great dress and looks amazing. You're like, well, I want to hang out with that person because I want to look like that person. So it's part of back to the whole holistic thing. The environment changes as your taste preference changes, as you're changing your insides. But you have to do it for some people gradually, for some people, hardcore. It depends where you are. And there's not a wrong place to be in a journey. You're just on the journey, and that's another thing that's happening with social media. We're comparing ourselves. Oh, look at so-and-so. Oh, she got it going on. She's making smoothies with 1,000 plant points and her children eat what. Okay, well, but the backstory is I've been doing it for 14 years, and every single day, I had to wean off the Doritos. We had to wean off the goldfish. We had to wean off the Pop-Tarts and all this other stuff. But you seeing my journey 14 years later, and it's like, I'm like, that's just my new life. Kind of like when you go to the gym. First time you go to the gym, you can't even do a sit-up because you're like, this hurts so bad. You do a push-up, you want to die. And then you look at the people that are doing 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups. You're like, it must be nice being them. I'm like, they've come to the gym every day and worked at it every day. You're seeing them 14 years into their journey so they can bust out. But our mind doesn't let us. We just go, I can't be like that, therefore I'm done. And of course, with social media, all you see is perfect pictures and the perfect thing. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to compete with that? Because now it's a competition.
You say to somebody, I love going to the gym. And then maybe you're lucky enough to like get them to go with you, and they don't see it. They don't see why that you love it because it's their first time. And kind of like you said, you just get used to a different level of like entertainment in a way. It's kind of like you get used to a different level of what you consider fun, and you start to see the results. So it is more fun and you do value it to a different level. But I think that's where a lot of people kind of get stuck in nutrition as well. As like, I can say that this pepper and hummus tastes good, but if somebody just got done, eating a Snickers, it's not going to taste as good to them. It's so hard to get people to where you are in that same sense, because whenever I'm eating something that I think is good and it's a healthy thing, it's like, I really enjoy this. But if I tell somebody that it's really good, then when they try it, they're going to be, very let down. So I have to almost be like, I think it's good. You might think it's okay. And then hopefully they kind of like it and maybe are willing to keep going, because I didn't hype it up too much. But that's certainly one thing that I see. And I try to, like, when I'm around other people, I try to kind of dull my own reaction to certain things, because it, can scare some people off in a way if they don't have that instant reaction as well. It's like, oh, well, that must not be for me.
Right. And, and I think a lot of people don't know that your taste buds die, right? So their cells, taste buds are on top of your tongue, and their cells, and they die every 30 days. A third of your taste buds die every 30 days. So in 90 days, you have all new taste buds. So if you are eating, back to our Dorito example, if you're like a Dorito lover and then you're like trying to eat a tomato, that's disgusting. But as you wean off the Doritos, the taste buds that are so Dorito infatuated go away, they die. And all of a sudden the tomato starts tasting better. In kids, we're like, they have to try something like 21 times before they like it, because if you've never had a broccoli, you don't have the broccoli taste bud. And so you need to try the broccoli, and the body goes, oh, we're having broccoli, we should make some broccoli taste buds. And as you make more broccoli taste buds, all of a sudden broccoli is no longer bitter. You can't be eating a Snickers bar, which is a sugar, dream, and then you go to broccoli, which is so bitter. You have to wean off the super sugary stuff in order to be able to make room in your mouth for taste buds that are going to accept the more bitter things. I mean, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, a lot of the vegetables, they are more bitter. That's just their thing. There's nothing wrong with them. But our taste buds are so messed up from the food industry that you can't make the transition. Fun fact, we have taste buds. They were supposed to protect us. So long time ago, when we were hunting and gathering in the forest, your taste buds were like, okay, if something tastes on the sweeter side, it's safe, you eat it. If something is bitter, you spit it out. It has a chemical metallic taste, you spit it out, that's going to be poison. And that's how humans learned, eat this berry, not that berry, eat this mushroom, right? Also in mushrooms, if a mushroom is on the brown, more natural colors, like then it's okay to eat. But if it's a bright orange mushroom, stay away from it, danger, right? Well, the food industry, what have they done? They've made our food orange, back to our Doritos. So toxic chemical orange, and our body's like, oh, it's delicious. It's not poison. It actually is. And then the taste buds have been tricked because the chemists know that if it's too metallic, you're going to spit it out. So they have to add the sugar to make it super delicious. So now our taste buds don't even know. So technically, Doritos, with all the food coloring, the sugar, the preservatives, the chemicals in it, that cause so many problems, are actually poison. I'm not being dramatic, they're actually poison. But our human body no longer can tell poison from something that is safe. We are now addicted to the poison, and the stuff that's safe, the fruits and the vegetables, like, oh, kind of boring. They're not that bright. They taste kind of bland, which is kind of how food actually kind of supposed to taste. So you're not dying. Anyway, so it's so confusing, but we've taken something that was supposed to protect us, and now it's working against us.
Yeah, you mentioned mushrooms, and I think that's one area right now that's getting a lot bigger, the functional mushroom industry, or whatever you want to call it. And it's coming with and it's actually something I've tried recently just to, give it a try, is the mushroom coffee, and then you have different mushroom supplements. And have you done anything or seen any research, or, have you tried any of those kind of mushroom coffees or whatever else? I know you can just eat mushrooms too, but like, have you tried any of those other things?
So I've incorporated more mushrooms because I agree. My family, we don't have a big mushroom repertoire, shall we say, and they're such powerful, good foods. So we've increased significantly in the past few months. I've done the mushroom coffees. They're good. My body didn't really enjoy, I think, lion's mane. It was just my body, because I think I was in too much stress. Anyway, it just wasn't a good fit for me. But I have a lot of clients that it's awesome. It calms them down. It simmers them down. They feel less anxious. They feel more calm. Some of them feel more focused, more energized. It's a great thing. But again, not 100% of things work for 100% of the people. That's all. So, but that just because it didn't work for me, I'm not like, this is nothing. This is not going to work. I'm just like, it wasn't a good fit for me. It's going to work for you. Let me get my mushrooms from a different source rather than the coffee mushroom, which would be so easy. But my body was like, no bueno.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience. I've only tried one brand so far, but I was pleasantly surprised by, when you hear mushroom coffee, and your first thoughts are like, oh God, what is this going to taste like? But it's definitely doable. So, if that's something, like you said, that works for you and things like that, then, adding it in certainly could be, something simple. I don't need a kitchen around me. Basically, I can work around my, my lack, I guess, A, my lack of cooking skills, and B, my lack of, even if I could cook, most times during the day, I'm not at home. So finding those little, those little non-cooking necessities throughout the day is just really cool for me. So, and that's another thing I think is, like, a lot of people don't have those skills anymore. It's like people are going out to eat more. People are, I think, losing the skill.
We've become so busy. I thought that, I knew that my family was super stressed, and my stress level was really high. But I was like, I'm making all these adjustments. I'm changing. And then we moved to New Zealand, where everyone is really chilled, and the five of us look like complete psychopaths. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, we're completely nuts. And, but it's really hard to realize how stressed you are when everybody around you is as stressed as you are. It's hard, and then we went to a country where people are not stressed like we are. And that's when it became so abundantly clear what a mess we are. And so in the US, it's hard to realize that stress is such a toxin, and it's related to our busy lives, right? Because when you're busy, and it's all related to not being able to cook, but we're so busy, like we wear like a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm just so busy. I'm busy doing this and busy doing that. Because almost like if you're not busy, then you're not going to be successful. If you're not busy, you're average, and what a horror to be an average person, right? And so we're making ourselves busy. We're saying yes to everything. We're volunteering for everything. We're putting our kids in every activity, which, by the way, I did all of that. And that's why we were eating nuggets, chicken nuggets at Burger King, because we were so busy that I couldn't cook. So I would take my kids to chicken until the day I realized, I was like, what am I doing? And I mean, God forbid that I would reduce the activities. It was like, must figure out shortcuts. And so we've gone into a place where we need more shortcuts. And now that you have drive-throughs, because one of the things that has gone exponentially high and profitable, fast food drive-throughs. I mean, there's some places in our town that are 5 lanes at the drive-through of some establishments, which is mind-blowing to me. And so we're now you can get dinner quickly. Now you can move quickly. Now you just grab your little snack and your little package, because let's just fill our life with more and more stuff. We haven't learned. And to your point, when you're so busy, well, you don't have time to cook, because chopping vegetables takes time, sauteing it takes time, watching the oven takes time. And because we're a child-driven society, generally speaking, the children have homework, or the children have sports, and they can't chop up a vegetable. They can't fold laundry because, we must cater to them. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, the reason we have these humans, they should fold their laundry. They should chop vegetables. They should go grocery shopping when they have a car and a driver's license. We need to stop acting like they're royalty, because then we sit around and as adults, we complain, all these people are so entitled. They can't do anything. I'm like, because we didn't let them do anything, because we're like, I'm so busy with your school. My parents would be like, okay, well, you're washing dishes, and there's not even would you like to rake the lawn, from the leaves in the fall? It was like, you're going outside and you're going to rake the leaves. And, these days, like, how much am I going to get paid? My parents would be like, you have rent. We haven't kicked you out and we're not charging you for electricity. So rake the leaves, But now we're just like, so when we're treating our children with such, I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to their feelings or validate or talk to them. I'm saying they need to do chores. They need to be productive members of the household, because if they're chopping the vegetables, then you have time to do the sauteing. If they're folding the laundry, then you might have time to go grocery shopping. What I'm saying is, we're doing everything while our children are sitting around on electronics and living the dream life and the royalty life. And of course, we're going to give them fast food. And of course, we're going to run around and try to get shortcuts, because you can't do it all. You can't be the mom, the laundry person, the chef, the haircut, all of it. So we're not outsourcing within our families to get more help so we can be in the kitchen. And to your point, when the kids are in the kitchen helping you, making the family life a little easier, they get skills that then they're going to have moving forward into their life.
I've never thought about it from that kind of like perspective of, we're doing everything for them. So why, A, they don't know how to do it, and B, they don't feel like they have to do it when they, get to that position. So yeah, definitely an interesting thought there. But moving forward, to kind of wrap things up, and I think a lot of people are having these same questions, and I didn't know if you had maybe a thought on it, but kind of going to the next few years. I think that's such a hard thing to know and think about, but what do you think? What are your predictions for what things are going to look like in a year, 2 years?
Oh gosh. I mean, we were like, it's the virus is only in 2020. When 2021 comes around, we're going to be done. I'm like, we're going to be talking about this for a long time. And I think we have changed the pattern of different viruses and bacteria because of the isolation, because of our humanness, of how we think we can control nature. We cannot control nature, but it was a nice try. And so I think we're going to see, COVID is going nowhere. COVID is going to be around, and it is going to, I don't feel like we've learned our lesson yet. And, I am not sure what it also will take. Cause when the pandemic came, I was like, yes, pandemic. Now people are going to see that we have the immune system, that we need to sleep and de-stress. And in quarantine, I was like, okay, now everybody's de-stressing. Like I had all these hopes. And then it's like, they open the gates, no more quarantine. And everybody's like 1,000 activities. Let's eat out all the time. I was like, okay, we learned nothing. So I worry that Mother Nature is going to throw something else our way in order to like shut it down. This was a call to action by Mother Nature. I don't want to sound weird, but it was a call to action. Like, we are a problem. We're too sick. What are we not doing? And we're just kind of like, oh, we didn't make vaccines. What? No, that's not what's missing. We are missing a key piece to what we need to do as humans, and we're still missing the boat. So I worry that something else is going to happen to get our attention to it. So, and I don't think this virus is going anywhere. It's going to keep mutating. Like all the coronaviruses have mutated, like SARS has continued to mutate, like MERS has mutated, all of them mutate. It's they go to animals and they come to humans. You cannot control it. You know, when people were like, oh, can you believe there's another mutation to COVID? I'm like, oh, have you heard of flu? Yeah, it mutates all the time. RSV, yeah, mutates too. That one, they all mutate. That's what viruses do. And it just like, again, I'm baffled by how baffled people are like, oh, there's another variant. I'm like, there was always going to be. Point is, to answer your question, I think we're going to continue seeing viruses. I am worried that something else is going to happen from Mother Nature because we haven't learned yet. I do see a shift in a lot of people changing their ways. I mean, my clinic I can't even tell you the wait list that we have because the change is happening. So I'm seeing people asking different questions, better questions. They're more into nutrition. They're into change. And I do think slowly we're going to start taking better care of our health, but I was hoping it was going to be much faster, but I am seeing the winds of change. And I hope that the winds of change come before something else from Mother Nature comes to try to awaken our senses.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something that a lot of people out there who have kind of the same mindset as we do on this kind of thing. We just wish that people would take advantage of the bad time that we are in to understand how it can be effective to have healthier habits. And yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to, something crazy like that, but if it does, and we wish that people would take it seriously, take their own health more seriously from the perspective of what can I do and not, what can somebody else do for me. I think that's a big part of our society right now is how can someone else help me? And it's a little bit what it looks like. It's definitely been an interesting ride so far. And, it's hard to even think about how we could ever, especially, from maybe my generation and younger, like how we can ever soon remember a life that wasn't, devoted to COVID.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that the truth? That is totally the truth. And, us humans, we remember the last thing that happens. Like when people come in clinics, like, oh, I've had a cough, but it never ends. I'm like, how long has the cough been going on? 2 days. I'm like, okay, you have not, but it's like there was a study that showed that people that had like an awesome vacation, but if the last day was horrible, when they told the story about the vacation, it was a terrible vacation. If the last day was awesome, it was an awesome vacation. So the same thing's happening here. You've lived this beautiful life, and then all of a sudden you're immersed in this COVID. And if you're down the track of anxiety and anger and fear, all of a sudden you're like, I've led a fearful and angry life, when in fact it was like just a year and a half. But which is a long time, but compared to like the 40 other years you were living before. So humanity, we remember the last thing that happened. I agree with you. And some people are going to have a tough time remembering what that was like before.
Yeah. And hopefully we can, so funny just to say it out loud, just get back to where we don't have to worry about those things, but also don't forget the lessons that we're learning. I think that's a big point of this conversation right here, is to help people have a little bit more information on how they can help themselves. So thanks for coming on and sharing some time today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. Always great to have a chat.
Yeah, it is. So if you want to let people know, though, where they can find you, wherever, that is for you, social media, website, and everything like that, that'd be great.
Sure. I'd love to have you guys. Listen, I do a ton of free education on my Instagram page. It's DRANA Maria Temple. And I mean, well, of course, we're talking COVID and we're talking, root cause of it, as well as back to school and supplements and all things kids and, well, even adults too. And I have a book that is an easy reference guide that it will help you on your journey in tiny, 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 small steps of how you can make changes in your own household. It's based on all the changes we made in our household. And so that is the Rule of 5, a parent's guide to raising healthy kids in an unhealthy world. And of course, my YouTube channel, the good news is they're all named after me, Dr. Anna Maria Temple. And YouTube, we are shopping this week. We're shopping at Costco for snacks. And then next week, we're going to Walmart for easy dinner ideas.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of good stuff out, a lot of good content coming out. So definitely check out those resources and educate. That's the big point of what you're doing, what I'm trying to do, and really what a lot of people out there are trying to do, because that's what helps everybody is just the education. So awesome. Thanks for coming on once again. You're definitely somebody that I look to for some good advice and some good, daily advice as well as that long-term advice. So it was good to get to talk to you again.
Super appreciated.
All right. Have a great day, and I'll keep in touch.